I had preeclampsia, and so I had to get induced at 37 weeks, and it ended in an unplanned C-section. Hey friends, it's Olivia Oaks. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome here if you are new. I had a baby 3 weeks ago, and I want to unpack my whole birth story with you. I wanted a super low intervention birth. I wanted the golden hour. I wanted to not get an epidural. I wanted a natural birth. I wanted to do delayed cord clamping, and I'm pretty positive I didn't get a single thing that I wanted off of my birth plan. But I also feel like I had a positive birth story. The reason why I think I had a positive birth story is because I don't have any regrets, and I don't feel like my birth happened to me. I feel like my husband and I were 100% in charge of every single thing that happened. I really believe that the way that we were able to do that is because we constantly spoke up for ourselves. We asked questions. We told them not right now. We felt like we had all the information that we needed at the time to make the next decision. I want you to know that even if your birth does not go at all the way that you wanted, that you can still feel that you have no regrets and it happened the way it had to happen, and you can still feel empowered. Even though there's things about my birth that do really make me sad, I still feel like it was positive. So that being said, let's jump into it from the very beginning. We went in Monday at 8 a.m. to get things going, and I got all set up. I had to do constant monitoring. I could only sit on a ball right next to the bed, so that was kind of hard. Started me on cytotec. Once I took my first round, it was 4 hours until I got checked again. I wasn't dilated at all. Things were happening, but I wasn't dilated, so then I needed to do a second round of the cytotec. After I did the second round and I did another 4 hours, I had progressed to a 3. And at that point, I couldn't do another round of cytotec, and then I also was too far to do the Foley bolt. My body was kind of progressing. I was having contractions. They weren't painful at all. It was in the evening, and they said, why don't you shower, get dinner, and then we'll kind of go from there. My doctor said, you know what? Let's just see if her body goes into labor naturally, because that's kind of where it seemed like my body was progressing to. But we reached a certain point and my body just wasn't progressing. My husband and I decided that we would break my water. My contractions weren't painful at that point, and so I've always heard that having your water broken makes your contractions a lot more painful. But once I had my water broken, it didn't actually kickstart anything. I believe that getting my water broken did cause my contractions to be a lot stronger. I just don't have a comparison of oh, my contractions were already painful and then they intensified. I don't know the time between all of that, but basically my body was not picking things back up. That was really disappointing because I was trying to go into labor naturally as I could without getting Pitocin. I ended up needing Pitocin anyway. They started me on Pitocin and I said, I want to go low and slow. Usually they bump you up to every 30 minutes. They only started me on a 1, and we only went up 1 every single time. There was maybe a time when they bumped me up more, but that was because I said, yes, you can do that. Definitely take it slow on Pitocin because it's your body. You listen to it and do what you feel is right and what you feel comfortable at in the moment. Once though we started Pitocin, things really did start ramping up. Don't know at what point I got checked again and I was a 4, maybe a 4.5. That was discouraging because I hadn't really advanced much. From my 3 to 4, there had been hours. My contractions were like period cramps, but then at one point they just switched and I had no pain in my front. I only had pain in my lower back. Now, I personally don't know the difference. I've heard people say that back labor is a lot worse. I'm not telling you that I think that my pain was a lot worse. I'm just saying even nurses told me that back labor is really, really hard. I got to a point where I was not able to sit down. I was breathing through them really well, and then I just wasn't. They got very painful and they never really were coming down. And at that point, I was throwing up. Enough's enough. I've reached my point. I'm gonna get an epidural. I was personally terrified of an epidural. The guy who did it was very nice, very good. I actually don't remember feeling any pain with it. I believe it was 100% God, because when I was sitting on the bed, I was so worried about it. I hardly felt any pain with my contractions at that point. And so that was 100% a God thing and a blessing. After I got the epidural, I got checked and I was at a 7, which I was super proud of myself that I got to a 7 all on my own. Pretty fast from that point on, I progressed to a 10. It was go time and it was ready to push. One thing I forgot to mention about my epidural is it wasn't working on my right side. I was still feeling all the pain there. And so they had me lay on my right side to kind of bring the medicine down, because they said it works with gravity or something like that. But I got to a certain point where I was actually feeling a lot of pain again. I felt like I kind of had to breathe through them. And even though they were significantly less painful than what they were, it was also in a way harder, because with the epidural, I just had to lay there. I couldn't move. Overall, I ended up having the anesthesiologist come in 3 times to give me a bigger dose. At a certain point, my husband realized that I could hit the button every 15 minutes, and that's what kept my pain away. So once we started pushing, they were worried that if I didn't feel anything, I would need to back off of it so I could feel some to push. But I ended up being able to push really well, even though I didn't feel anything. And so I said, that's great. I want to leave it at that. I don't want to feel anything more. Since I went ahead and got the epidural, might as well just be as pain-free as possible. All in all, I pushed for 5 hours. A lot of that was good. I was pushing, and then I would have a conversation with the nurse, and then I'd go back to pushing, and then we'd pick it right back up. That was kind of fun. My baby was coming. We reached a point and he would get his head positioned right, and then he would move. He had his neck like this. People kind of started bringing up having a C-section, and my response was to them, not today. We aren't doing that today. But I gave it all that I had. He just would not tuck his head down. And if he would have tucked his head down, my doctor said there was plenty of room, he would have slid right out. By the way, while I was pushing and during that time, I was throwing up. Given medicine to help with the nausea throughout the whole time of laboring, but it didn't help very good. But she said, it's time to have a C-section, and I bawled and I was hyperventilating. I keep telling people I don't know who she was, but I don't want to ever meet her again. That was the worst version of me that I have ever witnessed. But thankfully, because I had the epidural, my husband was right there by my side the whole time. I wasn't able to look at him in the eyes because I would just melt even more. And so I remember just looking up at the ceiling, because I was trying my hardest to get myself together and compose myself. I got wheeled back and they got me all set up, and it was pretty fast. I mean, from me stopping to push and my son being born, they gave me anxiety medicine afterwards. They couldn't give it to me while he was still in me, but once he was out, I was able to have some medicine to help relax me. And I think from that and coming down off of everything, I was actually falling asleep. And that part is really sad to me, that I don't have a lot of memory of meeting my son. That makes me sad that it had to be like that, because I did have, you know, while I was pregnant, I always would think of the moment of him coming out and coming on my chest, and just looking forward to that moment of meeting him. And so that is hard. How I met my son, I didn't get to do, the golden hour for a while because he had some health complications. So it was just, and I was very out of it at that point. I remember a nurse, while I was still on the table, she came up to me next to my head, and she said that he was not going to be able to come out. And I really appreciate her saying that to me, because that really validated that we had to do a C-section. Like, he wasn't going to come out vaginally. Because I think before I had a C-section, I almost felt like, do you even feel like you had a baby kind of thing? But in fact, it's kind of the opposite. Like, because of the whole story, I actually feel like, wow, like I did that. If I did that, I can do other things. Because if I was so scared of having that and I did it and I came out on the other side, then I'm able to do tough things. Unknowingly, I think I was somewhat critical of other people's C-section stories, and now I know, and now I understand. Sometimes C-sections are important. Sometimes there's no way around it. Anyway, the recovery for that was kind of interesting, especially because I didn't know what to expect. I had everything at my house set up for a vaginal birth. I didn't end up using any of those things. I almost needed a stitch, but I didn't, thank the Lord. But if you want me to do a whole separate video about my postpartum care and just my journey of what it was like recovering from a C-section, then I would love to do a whole separate video about that. So comment down below and let me know. I pray that you have a positive birth experience, whatever that means for you. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye, friends.